Hello, I'm Michael Embry, and welcome to our Meet the Kentucky Book Fair Authors Program. This is our fourth and will be our last program leading up to the Kentucky Book Fair, which we all know is Kentucky's premier literary event. Now, the Kentucky Book Fair, if you don't know by now, will be November the 14th at the Frankfort Convention Center from 9 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. But it's actually a two-day event. On Friday, the day before, from 9 a.m. until 2:30 p.m., we'll have a Children's Day. I think they call it Children's and Teen Day now. But we'll have over probably about 700 students attending that. Now, the Kentucky Book Fair, now in its 34th year, provides benefits to libraries, public libraries, and school libraries across the state. Now, this year we've offered 6 transportation grants, which will bring in students from around the state. So it's a worthy cause, and we hope to see you there. Now, with Christmas coming up, be sure and be there. You can buy books from the authors and give them away as gifts or buy a gift for yourself. Now, today we have 2 of our authors, and we have a special guest. We have Heather Sunseri from Versailles and Gabhart from rural Anderson County,
right,
and Mary Lynn Collins from our author selection committee. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, Heather, your book is Emerge, right?
Correct.
And what's Emerge all about?
Emerge is a dystopian teen novel. It is what I would consider, if an Ebola-like virus had gone airborne, what the world would look like 6 years later.
Okay.
So the teens in the book have to go on this adventure to really discover if this Ebola-like virus, which I call Bad Sam, is actually gone. And one of them is convinced it's not, and she happens to be the only person who has survived it in the past and has the antibodies to cure it in the future.
Now, is this the first book in a series?
It's the first book in the series. The second book is due out in November, actually.
And what's the title of that?
Uprising.
Uprising.
Yes, there's a dystopian city within the world now, and the people inside it don't really want to be there anymore.
Okay. Now, you also have another series as well.
I do.
It's the Mind Speak?
The Mind Speak series.
And it's, is this a science fiction as well? Or
it
what?
is science. It's kind of a medical sci-fi, and I like to say I write a little bit of science fiction gone sideways. And it is a story about teens who were cloned, and in the cloning process, there were consequences, and they have these supernatural powers, and they have to learn how to deal with those.
Okay, every time I have somebody who writes science fiction on the show here, how do you come up with these ideas?
Well, actually, the science fiction in Mind Speak is interesting because it stems from an article I had read about a Dr. Zavos. He was at the University of Kentucky many years ago, and he claimed that he had cloned a human and that was going to be the normal. And he left UK after that for a difference in opinions at the University of Kentucky, and he was forced to leave. So, but he went on to say that this science is there and can happen and will happen. So that's when I did the what if. What if that really was happening?
Really, a lot of novels are really kind of based on a what if.
Oh, right.
And I guess he was kind of right, since we've had, cloning of sheep and dogs
Yes.
and some other things.
Now, he has never come out and said that there is a cloned human walking around, but everyone pretty much knows that the science is there, that they're capable of doing it. No one just knows if it's been successful.
Are these fun to write? I mean,
oh yes, absolutely. That's a really fun series to write.
So I guess you just, I don't want to say let your imagination run wild, but it pretty much so though.
Right, and I just play this game in my mind of, if this could happen, what would people be like, and how would we react to such a thing?
Now, I'm reading some background about you. You're kind of I don't want to say a late bloomer, because that makes you sound like you're older like me, but you were in the corporate world, you were a CPA, and then you decided to become a novelist.
I did. I started writing, basically when my mom was ill, I started writing a lot. And I started to realize that I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and it was an escape for me at first, and Then I started reading a lot about self-publishing and how I could get my books out there without really having to have that wait time of going through publishers. And with my business background, I thought, I can do this. I can kind of have my own business and go through that process myself. So I just got the bug and went for it.
Has it been easy?
I wouldn't say easy. It's been fun. I never expected it to take off like it did. That part was really fun. But yeah, there are parts of it that are easy. The writing can be easy, but then the editing is difficult, and the business part of it, you just have to keep learning, keep plugging away.
I think a lot of authors would probably say the promotion marketing is probably the most difficult, because the other parts, I guess, is more the artist and the person.
Right, and you're going to have to do that no matter how you publish. So, that part, even though it is difficult, it takes you away from the writing part of it, so you get to do a lot of different things. It's never boring.
Right. Now, I understand you have a daughter who's a writer as well. Maggie?
Maggie Sunseri, right?
And she's going to be at the book fair.
Correct.
And her book is?
Her book is titled Awaken, and she is a dystopian writer. She writes very differently than I do, and it's set in a dystopian world about a girl who lost her memory, and she finds out later what took that memory away, and it's a good adventure.
Now, she just published this past, March or so?
Yes.
Okay. Were you much of I assume Mom was an influence.
I'd like to think I was an influence. I don't know if she would say that or not, but she wrote the book, and we always said that, we would read it and give her guidance on what to do next. It could be a book she just set aside and then go on to a next one. But we were blown away by the story. And I'm a firm believer that story is everything. And if you've got a great story, you can do almost anything with it. So after we read it, we just decided that this deserved the editing. And we went through the editing process with her. She worked very hard on it, and then we helped her with the publishing part.
Now yourself, do you let her read your drafts before you publish, just to get her some feedback from her? Or is that?
I would like her to. She's so busy with school that she doesn't always get to, but she does read every one of my books.
It's the Awaken?
Awakening. Or
Awakening, okay.
Awaken, sorry.
Okay. Is this part of a series as well?
It's going to be a two-part.
Two-part.
Yeah, she's working on book 2 right now.
Okay. It's why are dystopian novels so popular right now?
I ask this question a lot, and Maggie and I talk about this a lot, and I think there's just a lot going on in the world that begs for that, I don't want to say rebellion, but for lack of a better word, it is, teenagers like that rebellious part of our nature. And I think that teens sometimes feel like the government gets their hands in things a little bit too much, and that's what a lot of dystopians, is how they get to those stories.
I'm even amazed that quite a few adults love those books too. The Divergent series and what's the other?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
Right.
Did it all start with The Giver back, Lois Lowry back in the early '90s, or?
Very well could have. We like to compare Maggie's book to The Giver. It's along those same lines. So yeah, but yes, I mean it's not the first dystopian. I can't think of the name of the first one. We researched this at one point, but she's one of the earlier ones.
Okay. Will this be your first Kentucky Book Fair?
Yes.
Have you been as a patron before? Or?
I haven't, and I'm not sure why. People asked me last year if I would be there with my books, and that's when I knew that I needed to try to get over there. But I'm very excited.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck, and be sure and drop by and see Heather. And will you be sitting with your daughter?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I don't know that answer.
Okay.
I hope so.
Okay, we'll find out.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Our next guest is Ann Gabhart, and welcome, Ann.
It's good to be here.
And you're going to have at least 2 new releases at the book fair.
I do. I had one book came out in July, the Shaker book, The Innocent, and then I had a mystery come out just in October.
Now, The Innocent, it really kind of follows the theme of some of your previous books about the Shaker community, is that correct?
It's set in my fictional Shaker Village, which Harmony Hill, which is based on the physical setting of the Shaker Village in Mercer County, Pleasant Hill. But I have sort of pulled information from all the Shaker history, plus it's a fiction book, so you know it's not actually something that might have happened at that Shaker Village, but it happened at my fictional Shaker Village. But I do use the physical setting. I always mention the beautiful stone center house, and nearly all my books have mention of that wonderful winding staircase. And then I do talk about the Shakers' hearts to God and hands to work, so that they were always such workers and wanted to make everything as beautiful and as perfect as possible.
In a sense, is this kind of a Civil War novel?
Actually, this one takes place right after the Civil War.
Okay.
My son-in-law probably has never read any of my books, but when I published the Shaker books, the others, he would always, when he came home to see me, he'd always say, "You should write a little mystery." And I said, "I don't know whether I can write a Shaker mystery or not." And he said, "Oh, just bring in a sheriff." So when I finally decided to write a new Shaker book, which it had been several years since I'd written a Shaker book, I said, well, why not a Shaker and a sheriff? So even though the mystery is not necessarily the main focus of the book, there is a little mystery in there. And there is a sheriff and a Shaker.
Now, how many Shaker books have you written now?
This is the seventh Shaker book that I've got published.
Is there more coming?
Oh, I say every time I write a Shaker book, never again. So
Never.
we will see.
But your fans,
I said that after the first three. So
but your fans demand it, though.
a lot of my readers enjoy the Shaker books, and now some of them like the other books better. So you know, I have also a lot of books that are family-oriented, historical, little romance mixed, but there's a lot of family in those stories, and they're based more on my growing up or Lawrenceburg area. I tell my Lawrenceburg friends that I've renamed Lawrenceburg at least 3 times now. First one in the Holly Hill series, and then Rosie Corner, and now my new mystery, Hidden Springs.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up now. Now that is a departure for you, isn't it? I mean, what's a murder mystery? Murder at the courthouse?
It is. It's sort of what they might want to call a cozy mystery. It's different for me. I've always enjoyed mysteries, though, and actually reading Hardy Boy mysteries is the reason when I was a kid that I started writing. And that first book I started writing when I was 10 or 11 years old was definitely a mystery. We never solved it, but it was definitely a mystery. But I've always wanted to write mysteries, so I thought I'd give it a try. And
Was it fun?
well, writing is always difficult. I mean, you know, it's more fun to have written than it is sometimes to try to pull those words out of your head. They sometimes get very stubborn.
Right.
But I've been writing a long time, so I guess I think it's sort of fun, or I wouldn't do it.
Well, some mystery writers tell me that once they get into it, you know, that the characters take hold, and it's kind of fun just to follow and see what's going to happen. Now, do you plot before? Do you do an outline before you write a book, or do you?
No, I don't.
Characters take over.
Outline. I'm what is sometimes called a seat of the pants writer.
Yeah.
That means you sit in front of the keyboard and you just try to come up with your story. I think with a mystery, I'm actually in the process of writing the 3rd Hidden Springs mystery, and I think it might have been good if I'd had that all plot outlined ahead of time. But I've never done that much, and I think the mysteries are more difficult than the other books, especially the historical books that I've written, because I had that history outline that I could follow along in my story, even though my characters had a separate history. The actual history of whatever era I picked was there that gave it your story of bones, skeletons, so that you knew where you were going. But I sort of like my characters to come alive and take me wherever.
Well, I think you'd mentioned to me before the show came on that your first book was published in 1978, and you published something like 28 books since
28.
then.
I think this is the 28th. if I
kind of lose count after a while.
28, 29, somewhere along there.
Okay, and you fall under the genre of what, Christian fiction?
The recent books have been. The first two books many years ago were just historical romances in the general market. Then I wrote 11 coming-of-age young people's books. And then I started in the Christian inspirational market. So all my recent books have been by Revell Books, which is a Christian publisher.
Do you prefer those?
I really enjoy doing the Christian books. I like being able to include the faith journey of my characters in my books. Actually, when I was writing for the general market, some of my books were not accepted because they were considered too clean. So it's good to be able to write in a market where I don't have to worry about putting in scenes that maybe I wouldn't want in my book for whatever reason. I like just to tell a good story. I like having to be a storyteller and be able to let my characters tell their story. And in my stories, what happens in their faith life matters in this book too. Of course, with the Shaker books, with the Shaker religion, you have that item or that part already there, and my characters are generally, because they go to the Shaker village, then they are trying to decide if this is for them or if they're not going to stay with the Shakers, or how they will come to terms with their own faith.
Okay. Now you've been to, I assume, several Kentucky book fairs.
I have. I went to book fairs. I didn't go with the first two historical. I'm not sure when the book fair started.
1981.
Well, that would have been right after I had those two books published. But with all the young adult books, I was at the book fair, and then I had a few years where I didn't have a new book. And then since, I guess, 2005, when my first inspirational book was published, I've been at the book fair every year since then. I just love the book fair. It's a great event.
Still get excited and
It's a great event. I enjoy meeting the people again. I enjoy seeing the other writers. The only problem is I want to buy every book there.
Same here. Well, thanks, Ann, for being with us today.
I enjoyed being here.
And our third guest is Mary Lynn Collins, and she's heads our author selection committee, and she does a lot of other things with the book fair. And she's going to be the person who's kind of coordinate, or has been coordinating the readers meeting the authors with the symposiums and panels. So what we have coming up?
We have on the Saturday, we have over 15 different panel discussions, author discussions, really great writers and a diverse group of writers. And so we're hoping people will come and visit their favorite authors on the floor, but also pick one or two of these discussions. We have a writer from North Carolina. He's a New York Times bestseller, Jason Mott. He writes paranormal, is how I would describe his work. He calls himself a speculative fiction writer. He wrote The Returned, which is the basis of the TV series Resurrection, and he has a new book that he's bringing, The Wonder of All Things. Then we have Congressman Steve Israel coming. He has written a book called The Global War on Morris, and in his discussion we have teamed him with former Congressman Ben Chandler, and Ben will be interviewing him and talking about their shared experience in Congress as well as Israel's book.
Well, that's going to be kind of a must-attend thing for people who follow
politics.
politics.
I think it'll be fascinating. I think they'll probably even talk about Congress today. Right. So I think, for political junkies, it'll be a great discussion. And we have Peter Slevin coming. He is a journalist. He was with Washington Post for many years, was the bureau chief in Chicago, and he's written this biography of Michelle Obama, which is a great book. He'll be there to talk about his work. We know a lot of people here in the community are interested in Harper Lee. There's been a lot of buzz about her book, Go Set a Watchman. We don't have Harper Lee coming, but we have a wonderful book. Marcia Mills lived next door to Harper Lee for a period of time, and she wrote a book about that. So she'll be coming and talking about her experience, not only with Harper, but it turns out Harper's sister Alice is really fascinating. So that, I think anyone who's interested in Harper Lee will want to go to that session. We also have Gonzo Girl.
Okay.
Cheryl Della Pietra, she worked for Kentucky author Hunter S. Thompson for a period of time. She was an assistant, and she's wrote a novel based upon that experience. And I know there's a lot of people that are interested in Hunter S. Thompson, and this book reads just like you would think it would read if you were the assistant to Hunter S. Thompson. So that should be an interesting session. We have Davis Miller coming. He has written a book about his unexpected friendship with Muhammad Ali. This is a book that will not go on sale till after the book fair later in November, so we'll be the first venue that will actually be selling the book.
That's good. I've read some reviews, pre-reviews, and it's getting a lot of good buzz.
And I've talked to him on the phone several times, and I'm telling you, he's so enthusiastic about his work. So I know that'll be a great discussion. We have an author coming who's written a nonfiction book, John Temple, and it's about the pill mill that was set up in Florida and all the traffic that came to Kentucky. So the setting here is Florida and Kentucky. It is nonfiction, but it's been described as a page turner. The movie rights to this book have been sold to Warner Brothers, and the screenwriters who wrote Dallas Buyers Club have been hired to write the screenplay of that book that will be made into a movie. So that, I think, will be interesting. And Mr. Temple is really passionate about, he feels like he's on a mission to talk about the drug issues. So I think that'll be good for people who like nonfiction page turners and those people that are concerned about drug epidemic. We've got Robert Crane coming. If viewers remember the TV series Hogan's Heroes, he was, the Colonel Hogan was Bob Crane, and he was murdered, and his murder has never been solved, and his son has written a book about that, so he will be there. Recently we had the Kentucky African American Encyclopedia published, and we have the 3 editors who worked so hard on that book. They'll be there with a discussion, and then in a separate discussion there will be Carol McCabe Booker, who has edited the autobiography of Alice Donegan. And Alice Donegan was from Kentucky. She was the first African American woman, and maybe the first African American who actually got the White House Press Corps credentials. She fought her way into that circle, so that's a real interesting story. A couple of years ago, we had Mary McDonough come. She was Erin on the Waltons, and she came with her memoir about growing up on the Waltons TV series. Mary's coming back, and I think she was a favorite of patrons and also volunteers. She's coming back. She's done a novel, so this will be her first novel, and it's called 1 Year, and it is about 3 generations of Irish American women.
I think her, on her previous visit, I think, wasn't she the top seller?
Yeah,
in nonfiction?
Yeah, I think she definitely was, and I think there's still a lot of interest, and she'll be coming and talking about her novel as well as her memoir. We have a museum director from the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Tim Grove has written 2 books. One is about the first flight around the world. Another is about different stories about American history. His books are for like 12 years old and up. I think this would be a great one for a family to bring their kids. I think adults will be interested in his books, and I think that age, his books will be interesting for them as well. We always have a great program in the Old Capitol, and this year is no different. We have a panel that will focus on Appalachian writers. We're calling it Everything Old is New Again. And we will have with us Chris Scoton, who wrote The Secret Wisdom of the Earth. That's a coming-of-age story set in eastern Kentucky. We have Robert Gipe, who has written Trampoline, an illustrated novel, and that is one of the most creative books we're going to have at the book fair. And we have David Joy coming with Where All the Light Tends to Go. He's from North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina, and he's gotten a lot of interest in his book. This panel will be moderated by Karen Salyer McElmurray. Mm-hmm. She's a co-editor of a book of meditations about Appalachia, and her book title is my favorite of the book fair, and that is Walk Till the Dogs Get Mean. And let's see, and then we have a children's program that'll be at 3:30 that we have an author coming from Minnesota who's just a wonderful illustrator and writer. She will be there for children that'll be talking about kindergarten. Her name is Nancy Carlson, and it'll be for kids who are preschool kids in kindergarten, and that one is required to be registered at the Paul Sawyer. And then we have a session on writing historical fiction, and I think that'll be great too. We have 2 writers we've teamed up. Peter Golden, whose book is just going on the market in the next couple of weeks. He will be teamed with Jacinda Townsend, who is from Kentucky, who wrote Saint Monkey. And both of those authors have written really great books. I think that'll be a good panel discussion as well. So that's about it.
Well, that's some great authors, and you throw in these 2 authors here, and
Right.
Wendell Berry and George Ella Lyon, the Kentucky
Yeah.
Poet Laureate. And we're going to have more than 200 authors and
Right.
illustrators. So it's going to be a big event on November the 13th and 14th. November 14th is a big day, though, 9 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Now, if you want to know more information, go to kybookfair.blogspot.com, or you can go to Facebook and Kentucky Book Fair and be sure and like us there, because there are updates several times a day on both websites. So we look forward to seeing you on November the 14th, and it should be a fun day for everyone. It's the biggest biggest day for books, for literary events. So be sure and be there, November the 14th.